Hi, I'm Joey DiGiovanni, Technical Services Advisor for Unique Lighting Systems. Today we're here to discuss the technical aspects to our new Intelli-Fiber optic lighting system. When you order this system from the factory, you are going to need to do a couple of things beforehand. You're going to need to, one, establish the distance fiber optic cables you're going to need, meaning you need to know how far from the illuminator to the fixture you're going to need. You're also going to need to know what diameter to order in terms of the amount of illumination you're going to have. Longer distances are going to require a thicker diameter cable. We have up to a 50 strand cable, the smallest being 25. One thing we will recommend is that you order these cables with at least an extra 2 feet for making the actual connection, and taking into consideration running these cables through conduit and sweeps. You know, that's going to eat up some of the distance that you have there. So the cables will come pre-cut from us from the factory. The actual illuminating end of the fiber optic cable will come already set with this brass attachment here, so you don't have to worry about this. This brass attachment is threaded. This will be easily applied to any of our fixtures. The cables will also come tagged, so they'll be marked with the diameter cable it is and the length of the cable. From there, you're going to have a couple of things that this kit is provided with. One, it's going to be provided with an assortment of screws for attaching your base to your illuminator to your cap. We'll go over this a little bit in a minute. You're also going to have an assortment of tips. You're going to have small tips up to large tips, and you're going to use these different tips for the amount of cables you have. So if you've got obviously a lot of cables in there, or you're utilizing mainly larger diameter cables, you're probably going to go with the larger tip. If you've only got one light in there or one cable, for example, you're going to go with the smaller tip. You're going to have your actual harness itself, which has this locking mechanism on the bottom. You're also going to be provided with a little plug here, so when you do have just a small amount of cables, you're able to put this plug in there, so it takes up some space when you tighten it down. Some of the tools required that are not going to be provided. You will need a hot knife. That will be used for cutting the cables at the end of your tip here. You're going to need a razor knife, and you're also going to need a pair of dikes or a pair of wire strippers. A screwdriver obviously will also be needed as well to attach the screws to the actual illuminator here, the lid on the illuminator. So let's start by assembling our harness first off. What I have here is I've got two 50 strand cables and I've got two 25 strand cables. The first thing I'm going to do is start by stripping these cables down. I'm going to use a razor knife to do this. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go about 4 inches down. You need to be very careful with these cables. If you break these cables, so if you bend them too sharply and you actually snap them, it's not going to allow the light to travel through. And just like our low voltage cable, where we don't want to take off too much copper for fear of not having enough conductivity traveling through, you don't want to cut too many of these cables, or any at all for that matter, because that's going to limit the amount of light that travels through. So what you want to do here is you want to go about 4 inches down. I use my razor knife here and I just barely cut into the jacket, and I just spin it around here very carefully. Once I've got it cut, it's pretty easy to snap that jacket off. As you can see, no fiber optic cables came off. I'm going to perform this same task on all of these whips here, going about 4 inches down on all of them. Slowly spinning my knife around the sleeving of the cable here, and then snapping it off. It's got a little bit of dust here, so don't worry about that. And we'll do our next one here, same thing. Again, being very careful not to cut those cables. Snapping it off. And we'll do the last one here. Very carefully, and we'll snap that off there.